So I guess that we can get starting with our session. First of all, I would like to welcome everyone who joined us today. Welcome to our session, to another webinar at proMX. And today we are talking about a huge topic that is nowadays. There is a lot of information out there about AI, I believe, and not only about Power Platform or regarding Power Platform, it's almost everywhere right now. But we are focusing today on Microsoft Power Platform Automate, tips and tricks, and of course, using AI. And today we have with us two experts in the field, who is Mahesh Iyer, a business lead Power Platform at Microsoft, and Vaidas Grazulis, who is Power Platform developer at proMX. And of course, before jumping into the deep dive of the session, in case you want to know more about our webinars or discover just more about the topics we are writing, then just follow our blog on proMX or just subscribe to our newsletter. And yeah, right now, then to you guys.
Thank you, Katrina. And I just take the control here. Bear with me a second so that it's reflected on the screen. And are you able to see the screen? Perfect. All right. So then let's jump in. A quick introduction about who I am and why are we here today. So I'm Mahesh Iyer, business lead for Power Platform, responsible for the strategy and operations, everything about the most coolest and the hottest product in the market right now, right? And I say this for various reasons. And before we get into that part, a quick also introduction from you, Vaidas.
Of course, yes. Thank you, Mahesh. Yes, my name is Vaidas Grazulis. I'm a Power Platform developer here at proMX. Super excited being here with you guys. Super exciting being able to show you off some of the AI features that are reasonably fresh. Not all of them works great today as yet, but we will try work there together to build something out of it. I have more than 5 years experience working with a Power Platform, extending Dynamics 365 projects and Azure services. So today we should look into agenda. Next step, just have a quick change of the slides. Yes, so for our agenda today, Mahesh is kindly introduce us into a Copilot feature within the Power Platform. Then I will go through the steps involved in building the flow, and then we're going to practice making a quick flow demo together on the desktop. And for the final session, we're going to have our question and answer session. So if you guys have any questions on the spot, we're going to try to answer it all there. And this is it. Thank you very much. Back to you, Mahesh.
Thanks, Vaidas. Yeah, so I think one of the outlining things that I want to emphasize on is the era of AI is here, right? It's been more than 10 years that we've been hearing about AI in bits and pieces, but has never reached a point where this has reached your dinner table. Right now, there hasn't been a dinner or conversation that I have sat on where people are not talking about AI and ChatGPT, right? So what you see on the screen is everything around what it has been able to do. And the reason out there is very simple. Prior to this ChatGPT announcements, AI was a very particular field which is in the hand of data scientists. So you'd either need to qualify for it to learn and leverage this technology. But right after this, now everyone is able to access this. There are companies just built on ChatGPT models. And the reason is just very simple. It's so beneficial and it's so relatable for everyone in here, right? And while we have been making progress and strides in the AI space, I think there's one outlining problem that we are trying to solve at Microsoft. And the challenge here is the responsibility to transform an organization cannot be only on IT. So oftentimes we've seen there are so many business needs that are unmet simply because IT does not have the time to scale the way at the speed at which business is and the atmosphere around the business is changing. So your customer demands, we saw a change in during the pandemic. Now after the pandemic, the customer demands have completely changed, and the same will continue to happen over a few years, right? Where the demands move left and right, and business is figuring out how best to go after this. And if you take simple requests to IT, they're often coming back with questions like, hey, we don't have budget, we don't have time, right? So just to emphasize and alleviate and take away this problem from the shoulders of IT, we've baked in some fantastic capabilities within Power Platform, which is with what we call Copilot around AI. And today I'll be showcasing you two examples of how we can, and everyone can do this. It doesn't require you to be an expert in coding. It doesn't require you to have even the knowledge of the Power Platform. And I'm probably not exaggerating when I get into the demo to show that this is how simple we've made it, right? So let me just get into the demo straight in and show you what we have. Right. So here we have Power Platform's first component, which is Power Apps. Now think of it this way, that prior to the Power Platform, application building was in the hand of a select few people, developers or hardcore coders, right? And now, even with Power Platform, it required a bit of learning on how the components of Power Platform work. So what is a data model? What is an app? What is a screen? What are the components within the Power Platform itself? But now what we've been able to do is we've been able to stitch large language models within Power Apps. And what I mean by that is, hey, I go into Power Apps. This is the home screen, right? And I'm going to say, create an app to manage purchase orders. So literally, I'm not playing around with the tool. I'm not building anything here. I'm just giving what I have in my mind into a sentence, and I'm going to see whether the app is able to understand the context of what a purchase order is, what are the components that are needed within an application to manage purchase orders, and hopefully to save time. So voila, you have it in the screen. It's been able to understand that a purchase order will definitely have order numbers. It's been able to understand that there'll be vendor names of the vendor from whom the purchase order is going to be, the date of the order, the amount of the order status, and order type. Now, let's take a pause to think how much time this could have taken prior to this. Probably an hour, maybe 2 hours to build the data model in the background. Here, we're talking about seconds into which we built an app just by describing what I want, and the app understood the context of the basic elements needed. Now, assume that I, as a user, am not happy with the data model or want to add a few things left and right. All I would have to do is I go into the Copilot, which is on the bottom right, what you see here, right? And I'm going to say, create another column to store invoices or purchase orders. And the format type will be a PDF. And I'm going to say, let's see what the Copilot is. Okay, clearly it's not able to understand what I said. And this happens. And that's why Vaidas was saying sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And that's the challenge we're trying to solve. So we want to make sure that the application is getting to a 90% accuracy, because that in itself will have a huge impact. Now, let's say I say create a column to store PDF, format type, PDF. This is pretty simple, and I hope this understands, because we tried it in the afternoon and it worked. Fantastic. So that's exactly what happens when you want to show it to a large audience of people that things work, and it's exactly that time that AI ditches on you, right? So this definitely has to happen, and it has happened today. But let's take another thing here. Create more sample data. Okay, So let's see. And for those of you who are wondering how this ties into Power Automate and the tips and tricks, we're getting there. But what I want to be able to showcase to you is, hey, building application itself has become super easy. And then you can come to an automate flow and see what it can be done. So here it's understood that it's been able to build me more sample data, right? So if I click on create app, hopefully within the next 1 minute, it's able to build the interfaces and components based on the data model that we have defined in the background, right? And then as a user or a developer, my job is to bring into the corporate identity parts, which is how do I make the UI UX more in the direction that users adopt it? Or how do I add brands or your company logos and your corporate policies and whatnot? So let's wait to see if this happens. But I think taking away the pain of application building from the hand of a select few to everyone through large language models in itself is a huge stride with what we have been able to do within Power Platform. And despite the talking, the app is still not being built. So I'm just hoping that it turns out to give me something instead of a showstopper. And yeah, okay. So finally, something seems to be working. So normally, if as a user, you would come into this screen to build an app and start defining on the left. What you see here is the tree view and start adding the components, the data and the buttons and whatnot, right? And really a day that it doesn't want to work. Okay, so there you have it. And if I just preview it, and of course, I'm not the best designer and I'm definitely not the best UX person, but simply within minutes, we've been able to build an app and then we can go about defining the UI, UX, the identity and whatnot. But here it's been able to understand the purchase orders, the apps, and I can start creating new records to test it out. So think of the times when business analysts take requirements, then after taking requirements, they take it to the coding team. Now, instead of just first going into coding and then showing it to your end customer, imagine if you could test it out directly while taking business requirements. Hey, is this how you want to be doing it? And if the answer is yes, then you can take it to the coder and say, hey, now let's bulletproof this app and build something that the customer is asking. So leaving out any unsatisfied customers or requirements that have not been met, right? Now let's get into Power Automate. So imagine this app has been built and now we want to go into Power Automate. And before we get into the demo side, keep in mind that the normal automation tools that are there in the market, they're not built for business users. Like myself, I don't know how to use automation tools. I don't know how to code. But majority of the automation needs live within the business, right? So what if I, as a business user, want to be able to create flows? So I come to this part which says describe it to design it, which is the latest feature we have launched within our Automate, and Vaidas will be showcasing how this can get into the depths of it later in the demo. So here I'm going to say every time I receive an email from my boss, delete it. Okay. And I'm going to see if it is able to understand the context of what I'm saying. Voila. It didn't even take 5 seconds for it to understand that when an email arrives in my inbox, take my Office 365 user profile, get my manager's user profile based on where I am sitting in the organization. And if the condition is met true, delete this email. Now I can even say additional things to make this more complex, but literally building an automation from large language or describing what you have in your mind has never been there before. And this will be the game changer where, as a developer, as a pro coder, you can let AI do the simple things and you work on the complex parts of it, which is to connect the data to multiple systems, building those APIs, building those connections and defining those data models. That's where the heavy lifting comes. And that's where the developers have to have a show. But businesses can at least try and see what things can be done. Right. Now let's take another example where instead of describing what I want to build, how about we take, so the common example we have within automation is around, hey, the invoice comes in, we want to be able to extract the information using OCR and probably trigger a workflow based on the information that has been extracted. So what I would do is I'll go into AI Builder and I would go into the models that are already pre-built. So this is out of the box. You don't have to be doing anything of building or training any model here, right? We've done that part for you. And you have a magnitude of models that have been predefined here. So I'm going to showcase two simple examples. The first one is extracting information from invoices. It can be invoices, it can be delivery notes, it can be any document that comes in to or purchase orders, right? So I'm going to say, yes, I want to extract information from an invoice, and I'm going to probably upload an invoice that I recently traveled for. So this is the invoice, and within a second, it's been able to understand, the AI has been able to recognize the components within the invoice, and it has given me the first answers. Who is the customer, Microsoft Deutschland? What is the invoice ID, the total amount, the service date? And it has also been able to itemize the items on my bill on what are the things that I spent this money on. So prior to this, and that's why I said the era of AI is really here, all of this would be possible only in the hand of select few. If now a user is going into automate and trying this, everyone can do this. Literally, I had no experience before coming into this call on how to use Power Automate. I just described what I want, right? Let's take another example where I say, hey, we have a lot of emails coming in from customers, and oftentimes we want to extract the information from the email. So let's say customers asking, hey, what is the status of my shipment? Shipment number is this. What is the status of my complaint? Complaint number is this. So what we can do there is use the latest feature, which is around create text, answer questions, summarize documents, and move with GPT, right? So this is a pre-built model. And what we can do is there are some sample data that we have given so that you can take it from there. So you don't have to start from scratch. So I'm going to say extract information from text, right? So this is the simple example of email coming in, people trying to understand what's this email about. So this is the text. Good morning, blah, blah, blah. We have these kind of containers. What is the status of these containers? And let us know. Please reach out to us. Okay, so I'm going to take the first standard example, and then I'm going to put in my own example just to see if the AI is able to understand this. So here I give the instruction to extract container numbers and registration numbers in the text below, right? And if the text below is less than a couple of words, answer that it can't extract information. So I'm saying test it out, and hopefully the AI gets what I'm trying to say. Okay, so I'm going to show it to you side by side. This is the container number, right? And I said extract the container numbers. On the left, it has been able to extract all the container numbers. And I said capture the registration numbers, and it's been able to capture the registration numbers. Within literally 2 clicks, where I said, this is what you need to extract, and this is what the summary should be. Now let's take another example where I want to say, hey, I'm just getting some I, as a customer, I'm putting a lot of complaints somewhere and it's being unanswered, right? So I'm going to say, I'm going to change this text, right? And I'm going to say, this is the start of my text. And the command I'm going to give it is this. And I'll just go into this in case people are not able to follow up on what I'm doing on the screen. So I put in a text below and I said, hey, I'm not having a great customer service in the last 2 weeks. I've been trying to reach out to you on number portability, a common challenge which we all have across the globe. And please help me. And if you don't, I threaten the company, and I will make sure this is visible on social media, right? Happens so many times where we threaten someone saying I'm going to take a legal action, blah blah blah, and I've given my name and I've given my number, right? And as a command, what I've said is summarize the customer sentiment in a few words, extract the customer name and the phone number, and check if the email talks about social media. And the reason why I give this example is, imagine if you as a company are getting a lot of emails, and if someone says, hey, I'm going to take this on social media and make sure that you have an impact, or I'm going to take a legal action, right? What I as a customer should be doing is immediately jump on this request and say, hey, someone's going to take our company down if we don't address this in time soon. So let's take action. So this is what I have tried to do in the example, and I've summarized this, and I'm going to say, test this out. And there you go. Within a second, it's been able to say the customer sentiment is negative based on the text that I've written and all the things inside it. I've put my name, I've put my number, and yes, because I say social media, it checks if there is a social media flag and it says yes. And all I have to do that after this is to build or use this model in a flow in an app, right? So we've literally taken down the amount of time to build these things from years, months, weeks to minutes. And never before has this been possible anywhere in any platform across the globe, which is what brings me to the last point before Vidas gets into the depth of how a flow can be built around the models that have been extracted on where the future is heading, right? The future, a lot of platforms will say it's coming soon. We are building these chat GPT capabilities into our products, be it SAP, be it whosoever. At Microsoft, we say the future is now. These big capabilities have been built and they will be going live before you know it. And if you are curious to time and test out when this will be, join us in Microsoft Build, which is happening literally in a few hours from now, to understand when these capabilities will be available. And the way I describe the future is, as a user, dream it, write it, and you have it. Be it an app, be it a workflow, be it an automation, all you have to do is describe the things that you want, and the major lifting will be done. And you will have your time back as a developer, or as a business user to do and focus on more impactful tasks. And with that being said, why don't you show us what you got?
Yes, thank you, Mahesh. This was fantastic. There's so much excitement over what is already available and what's coming our way. Let me share my screen and maybe I can take into my session. Okay. Uh, I hope everybody can see my screen.
Yep.
Okay, brilliant. Right, so let's build a flow quickly, a production work flow. Let me just quickly set the scene around maybe what we want to do, what is our challenge for a day, and how we would want to solve it. So building on what the Mahesh has demonstrated already, let's imagine scenario where in my imaginary company I have a very old process where my co-workers, my colleagues might have their monthly expenses that they might have to expense through the accounting process, and my current process is so old that all the invoices are coming in the email to the accounting clerk. Then he have to extract all the information from the manually, store it into a database so that we could analyze it and work on it after. How much good would that be if this process could be turned into automatic? How much time would that be saved for our company? So a quick user story that we define in this case. As a user, I say I want to extract and store purchase items from the expense it receives attached to incoming emails, so that I can easily access and manage the data in the database. I have written a few acceptance criteria for my process. I say my process will be successful only if it can achieve the following. When the email with the expenses is received, the system should automatically detect and process the attachments. That shouts out Power Automate already in my head. For number 2, the system should store received copies items in a database, associating them with a corresponding email user account. Okay, here maybe we might have to do some lookups into the contacts to identify who's who sent us an email, and so on. For number 3, we quickly have the system should be able to handle various receipt formats and adapt to changes in the structure or content of a receipt. And this is where the magic of AI model comes in, because obviously the model is capable of acting on this variation in the given inputs. For number 4, the system should extract relevant data from each receipt, including purchase items, such as item name and price. Okay, this is simple. In Mahesh model, we saw that there's so much more that the AI models can capture from the given input, but for us, that will probably do. And last but not least, to make it a production worth a process, we should probably have some problem handling, error handling. What if for any reason our process fails? We might want to inform automatically our support admins. And so next, quickly, let's go through the simple data model that we defined for this process. So here, as you see, we have 3 entities. We're going to have a contact information stored in a database. We will have an entity to store the actual receipts files, and then last but not least, a separate entity where we will be storing our items of those receipts. Down at the bottom, just a quick look into the schema of the actual flow, or how the process should run. So yes, we can see our trigger. Yes, we will have to find or link the contacts with the individual who sent us the invoices. We will have to extract the receipt data. So we will have to use the AI model here to extract the data from the actual receipts. And last but not least, obviously, store the information in our data source. Okay, for given scenario, I'm not going to demonstrate this directly on the screen. We saw in Mahesh's presentation how this works, but I'll just quickly go through the steps involved. Again, we will use the describe to design it, a creation option of the flows. In the description section, I just typed in, when a new email arrives with attached receipts as images, extract received content using the AI model. I click submit button, and I am giving the options, in this case, a few options of what my flow template action steps would look like. I can accept a given one. I could even, down at the bottom here, we can see there's even an option to show different suggestions. So if we're not happy with maybe the given first scenario doesn't ideally represent what we need, we could even switch that and move on into a second step of this 2-step approach, where we are building the connections to data services. As we can see here from the screen, system Power Automate automatically identifies the sign-in user. So it would create the connections to like an Outlook data service, Dataverse data service with a given user's account. But if need by, that can be changed. So say we need to use a service account or some accounting email inbox for the received emails, that can be changed and set up as per our needs. Once it's all ready, we click on the next. And last step, we're being presented with a template, pretty much a blank template of our what our flow would look like. So at this stage, we're ready to start filling the gaps. So let me just switch quickly to my other screen. Can you see my screen here now? Yeah. Brilliant. Right. So let's quickly analyze what we have here. The first section on the top here, we can see that Power Automate named my flow exactly to the phrase that I've described in the request for the new flow. We could use this opportunity to rename it, maybe to something shorter, maybe to something more meaningful or helpful. So let's call this a receipt processor. Why not? Flow. We can see our a trigger given here. This is pretty much when a new email arrives, a blank template. Since we have identified in our request for a new flow that we will be working with attachments in our process, the Power Automate automatically pre-selected me include attachments and only with attachments options. Here, we don't need to specify anything else. We don't even need to fill the to, because the service knows that the connection is made with this account, so it will read to this inbox for incoming emails. The only suggestion I would have here, maybe, so that it doesn't trigger on every single email that comes to my inbox, I would suggest let's put something like expenses in the subject filter, so we only trigger this flow to the emails that contains that catchphrase in the subject filter section. So our trigger is complete. Let's see what actions Power Automate suggested us. Just the two actions at this point. It says, okay, so we're gonna within the for each loop. So it has identified that we will want to trigger this action for each attachment in our incoming email. So it created me a for each loop. It knows that it's going to work on each attachment from the email, and we have a couple of actions inside of that. So first action here, it says, let's predict using AI builder model. So let's take a peek inside of this. Here, we have an option of choosing the model. So as we've seen earlier on, Microsoft has pre-trained already quite a few different models for different business scenarios. So we can pick and choose from the existing models. But on the side of that, of course, if there's a need, we can even build our own model as is required. For today, let's just choose the receive scanning model. How this model works: once the model is selected, it asks us to provide as a mandatory field a file that this is going to look at. So if I just to click on that field here to select the file, in dynamic context section, I've already suggested to work this step on the attachment content. So on the actual content of the receipt that is being sent to me. Okay, this step is completed. We can, if we need to, if we want to, rename these steps so it makes a little bit more. It becomes a little bit easier to understand it. Maybe it helps our co-workers if we're working on the same process together to understand what these steps do. So let's call this scan receipt step. Great. And the second given action for us is suggesting that we want to store this information somewhere. So it's a step of adding a new row in a Dataverse entity. If I click this, once again, it asks me to choose the entity or a table to which this information should be stored. As we said, we want to store the received items. So let's just drop this in my received items entity. I select this table. I can see that there is one mandatory field in this entity. It's just an item name. So why don't we configure that as well? Once I click on this item name, I can see that in the dynamic content section, Power Automate suggests me already what elements I want to take. And these elements are coming from the previous step. So in this case, from a step, scan the receipts. So I'll just pick purchased item name. In that, since scanning of the objects will return us an array of items, so multiple items, so each receipt can have one or more than one items inside of it. Power Automate straight away identifies that this is going to be an array, and it drops my step into so-called apply to each loop, meaning that for every returned receipt item, I'm going to perform the same action. So again, that's all done automatically for me. My flow is ready to be saved and is ready to be tested. Let's see how that works, and maybe we can then expand on this and see how we can turn it into a more production-ready flow. So just quickly to demonstrate for this exercise, I just grabbed a couple of sample receipts from the internet. One of them is about some boutique items. The quality of that is reasonably low, actually. I can barely read it into it. So let's see how the Power Automate, Power AI model is going to work. Other one is about some clothes, and there's you watching this, also some reasonably expensive purchases. Don't know if that should be expense for the company, but let's give that a go. So I'm gonna send myself an email. So let's click on the test section of the flow. We're gonna test this manually. I'm gonna click on a test, and I'm gonna send myself an email like so. So it's from me to myself. I've included that subject, the catchphrase, expense in there. I've attached those two receipts to the email. The body of the email is quite irrelevant at this point. I send this out, and let's see what happens there. You can see the email arrives. Let's just give it another moment for our flow to trigger. Yes, so the trigger has happened. The for each loop is currently counting time. So while that is doing, let's maybe have a quick peek into outputs of this trigger. So what information is that we're actually getting from all of those steps on the Power Automate? One of the great methods here is just simply click to the download option. What this will do, it opens us another browser window, and we can see in this window it literally lays out the response to the JSON from the given step. In this case, from our trigger, we can see here it's classified, grouped into a headers, it grouped into a body, response body. Within that response body, we can see things like from a property. So this is probably something that we will use later in our process when we want to identify and link the receipt with the actual sender. And the lower there, we can see we have the attachments, array of the attachments, and obviously all of the content of our images. So that is, again, good way to analyze and understand what is happening behind the scenes, behind all this fancy UI, which we see from the Power Automate window. Okay, so that's, if we close this, we can see our next step is done. So for each loop has worked. We can see, oh, both of the actions are green, both of the actions are successful. We can see that we've scanned two separate receipts, and we can see that within those receipts we identified and we processed on the receipt one we have 3 items, and on the receipt 2 we have 4 items. If I could quickly jump here onto my table, this receipt items table, and I refresh the screen, I can see that I have all these items in my table. I haven't passed anything like a price or a receipt link yet, but I can see that this part of my process already works. Just take them off for a sec, because next time we don't want them to be in the way. But back to our process, back to our flow. Let's keep editing this. So next step, as we know in our process, we said we needed to find to link the contact with the receipts. So why don't we drop another steps outside of the for each loop, because for each loop again works for each of the attachments in our email. So we just need to find the contact one time. So if I choose to add a new step in this flow, I can see that my actions are grouped into a type of the actions. If I go into a Dataverse actions, I would say list the rows. I would like to find a row of a specific contact. So let's choose a contact table. Contact. Do that without spelling mistake, that'd be brilliant. But let's choose a contact table. Let's see what parameters we can pass here to make this work quicker. Maybe another good practice, let's rename these fields, so these action steps, so they are easily to read and understand. So let's call this find contact. So in our contact entity, I would maybe could demo you here. This is my imaginary company. These are my imaginary colleagues. I have myself in there. I have an email column. So what I really want to do, I want to compare this value of this email column with the value that I receive from a property in my trigger body. So now, how should I do that? How should I do that? I know I have an option of filtering rows, and I can use so-called OData style syntax to filter these rows. So instead of returning all the contacts into my process and then doing the filtering here is within the Power Automate, I can pass the filtering back to the data source, which it makes the thing so much quicker, and it obviously reduces the load of our process. So very quickly, I could come in here. One of the ways of finding the contact that you're looking for, click on the edit column. In advanced features, what we need to find is a logical name for the column that we want to filter against. I quickly copy that, bring it back to my process, paste it here. We could use now, say, data expression equals. So it's just the EQ. And what we really want to compare it is against this from a property from our trigger body. So that needs to be within the speech marks, but this type of expression would return us that it requires contact. Now, knowing that we will use the return of this contact in our process to link the receipt with the contact, there's no need to return the full metadata, full rich metadata that Power Automate would give us if we were to request the response about the contact. So to limit that, again, so we could use this option called select columns. And in here, we could just provide the column logical names for Power Automate to return that to us. So another quick method here to do so. This is the property I want. So this is the ID of the contact that I want. So the way to select this column logical name, we're going to use exactly the same method. So it's just a edit column, you jump into the advanced options, and we have that logical name given there for us. Remembering all these fancy ways of naming columns is probably a bit impractical. So this is a great way of identifying what you actually need in your process. And this is it. So this process is now set and completed. This is going to return us the ID of the contact. Back to our for each loop. We know we proceeded the scanning here. I could maybe insert another option here to say we want to save now the receipts in the entity. So another Dataverse action that we can use is called add the row. I quickly click on that. Okay, let's rename this to add a receipt. This will go to our receipt entity. The wrong one, almost. Correct ourselves this way. Yeah, receipts. Happy there now. Okay, so here we know that we will pass a contact. So this is the ID that is coming back to. Now, passing information to a lookup column might seem a little bit tricky because apart from providing the ID to the step, we need to provide the entity schema name with that as well. So one of the ways to find that is as shown here. If I would come back to my identity, back to my table, just go to a tools section here at the top, I can copy set name. Just copy set name here. I can pass that quickly, paste it into there. The set name in this case is a contact, and in the brackets, I can contact. Contact. Right, so this will bring it into another for each loop simply because our find contact step will return us an array of items. Again, exactly the same process what we saw with our the received items. So I could leave it as it is, knowing this is going to be only a single loop, or I can quickly change this process and write that the extraction out of it. So knowing that this is what I will, okay, I know. Sorry, my bad. Let's rewrite that. So instead of using this method, I will take the outputs from the step find contact. Now the results of that will sit inside of a body, and within that body, we're going to have a value. And now all I want just the first element, first item of this list. And giving this first item, I would say, this case, provide me a contact ID, which we defined earlier. That's good. So another great way of working with Power Automate, you can drag and drop these elements, these actions any way you want. So I could take it out of this, out from each, apply to each loop. I can even drop that loop because I feel like I don't want it. Okay, so we have our step for add the receipt completed. Now that file or image upload in the Dataverse, it's a two-step approach. So first we need to create an item, then we need to use an upload the file or image step. So because we say we want to store our receipts within the entity, so let's choose the entity. For the draw ID, we know we're going to use the ID of this previously created record. This is just going to be a receipt, and we know it's a receipt unique identifier for entity instance. The column name is given for us. We can choose the columns that are the type of a file or an image. And last but not least, we can select the content that we are providing for this step. So in this case, it's going to be an attachment. We can select that in a dynamic content as well. And it's a attachment content. Okay. Quickly, let's rename this step to, again, something more friendly for us. Upload let's call it receipt image. Yeah, happy. So now we can work in our flow, which is the best order of the flow. Maybe we want to add receipt first. Maybe we want to obviously the flow the image afterwards. Maybe the scanning can come after that. Once again, we can drop and drop these elements as we feel to. Okay, next, just quickly to finalize in our next step, which we can, again, for the sake of each, we can apply this to each item to help us read this easier. This step is not very clear as well. Let's call it add item. Right. So as we know, in the beginning of this exercise, as we did, we knew that we were not able to store the price of the item. And if we look into the suggested elements from this a process, we can see that there are quite a few elements given to us. They might not all make clear sense. We can see some coordinates there. We can see a lot of elements here and there. So what is the best way for us to define or find the way to the data that we actually need in our step? Let me just bring you back a step to our flow. One step I wanted to demonstrate you from our previous success safe is the actual payload or the response from our receive scanning or AI model usage. So this is the output. This is the entire body of our process step. This is probably not the best ideal scenario how to analyze this info. So if we could copy all of that and bring, let's say, to our favorite code editor. In my case, let's jump it into the Visual Studio Code. I could quickly visualize what all of this what this step does. We can see it even returns over 2,000 rows of code for us. But it is formed as, we can see there's a response, we can see that there's a prediction output, we can see the status that we can check against, and then down at the bottom we can start seeing our items that are coming through. So we can see the value, we can see the name of the item, we can start seeing the value of the item. Again, that's being displayed to us as a string, so maybe we might need some data conversion here. But quickly, I can see our time is coming to the end there, and I can see Katerina is already looking at me. So why don't I quickly push this expression from the sample, and would show you how we can build all of these expressions. So even if we have to work within Power Automate with the data that is not necessarily given or shown to us exactly how we would expect it, we can build these expressions ourselves. And in this case, let me just show here in price section, I will build this expression and drop this line of the code. What this does, it will convert that string into a float. It will take the item from scan receipt item, and it will pass this info into the flow, into the flow each item. Let me just rename that step, so that otherwise we might have a problem. Okay, so that's this section. Last but not least, we need to link this with a receipt. Again, the receipt entity, the set name is called a receipt, a new receipt, and we can take the receipt ID that we already seen in the previous step. Okay, so all in all, given this, we could save our flow. We could run quickly another test and cross the fingers that everything would work. Okay, ready to test. I click on the test. I'll send myself another email to trigger the process. Email has arrived. So let's just give it a moment or two for the flow to trigger. So the flow is running. We can see that the contact has been found. This step is green. The flow will go for each of the following steps as it is quiet. This will not take too long. While this is running, again, maybe a quick demo, what output we're getting from find contact step, which we can again see in this very kind approach in the browser. Okay, all done, all ready, all good. I were to go now through into my receipt entity and would have, let's try and have a look what is inside of there. Do we have any contacts? There you go. We have a couple of receipts that we created. The receipts are linked with a contact who sent an email. I can see the stored items inside there. That is all acceptable. Great. If I go into my receipt item entity, I can refresh that. This time I can see the item names. I can see the prices scanned from there, and I can see how receipts are linked with it. Final step that we agreed to show you guys is about the error handling, but just looking at the time that we have remaining for our webinar, I think we can take it into a next session. So thanks for that. Thanks for your time, and I will hand you back to the Katerina.
Thank you so much, Vaidas. Thank you so much, also Mahesh, also for the all the information provided and for driving us into these deep steps and into the demos. Let's check if we have maybe additional questions. I see that Mahesh actively answered some of them. So the very first question was from Anshu about the AI taking the heavy lifting work, like you just explained, Mahesh. I'm not sure if you want to add anything else there.
No, so there's definitely we're focusing on that, and in build there'll be some announcements around this topic. But I'm pretty sure or I'm confident to say within the next few months, this is also an area where we'll be touching at to do the heavy lifting away from you.
Would be great, right? But
Yeah.
let's see. Let's see. It's already moving forward, but okay. And I believe the rest of the questions were quite answered. So yeah, no more questions in the chat, guys. Take your chance. We still have a couple of minutes. And if there is anything you would like to know, you can contact us anytime. Welcome to contact proMX via LinkedIn or via our email. Just check our website and feel free to reach us, and we will help you with your processes. And if you want to get into Power Platform, Power Automation into your processes, so yep, contact us. And yep, I see a couple of questions. Yeah. So there is a question. May be a word to keep me or in general us calm. Should we be afraid of AI?
Right. So I think that there are multiple ways of looking at the situation. Nevertheless, I would like to emphasize on the fact that the reality is a lot of what you do today will definitely shift. Take, for example, how energy was manufactured like 100 years ago. We were looking into coal and gas. Now we're transitioning from coal and gas to solar and nuclear and whatnot. So definitely the landscape and the way your roles will change. Should you be afraid about it? Definitely not. Because technology is the only way that we can solve the bigger challenges within the society. So what can have or could have taken probably 1 year to build can now be built faster. And imagine if you could build these things faster, what impact you will drive for your organizations. So you'll be actually, enabling your company to reach new heights by adopting it instead of being afraid of it. That's how I'd put it.
Mm, Yep, I think that's the right way to look into the opportunities that it provides. Thank you so much, Mahesh. And a question about the recording. Yes, we will provide a recording for the attendees. And okay, so there is the question to address the question about.
I
Mhm.
think I already answered that,
Yes.
Katrina. This is not
Mhm.
possible as of today, but it's an interesting feedback. We hope to have this in the future. I mean, but
Mhm.
I'm just thinking out loud. Maybe ChatGPT can already give this answer, right? What is?
Exactly, Mahesh. I just wanted to add a little bit. Already within this IT community, we are deploying ChatGPT to help us code, to help us become better, to help us find our answers quicker. So rather than spending hours on doing the research and going through the documentation, sometimes it's just a line to ChatGPT can help you solve your issues.
Mm.
Yeah.
Making use of the combined resources that we already have available for us, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
Exactly.
thank you so much. All right, then I believe that we can close the session. Thank you once more, Vaidas and Mahesh, for providing all the information, for the great presentation, for being today with us, and of course, for being all of you today with us. We welcome you as well in our future events. So keep up to date in our LinkedIn newsletter, freshly released a week ago. So feel free to follow us there. And of course, as mentioned, just keep in touch. In case you have any questions, just contact us and we'll help you with any challenges you may be facing. Have a great evening, everyone, and see you soon.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Bye bye.